I don't know how to stress it. You gotta do what I was yeah. When I'm home, somewhere all alone, I'm reading, preparing for war with these demons. Exercising, practicing my breathing. Live for purpose, there's nothing for no reason. I come home, then I work out, clean up and cook, take a shower, write a rhyme, then I pick up a book. Maybe some John Henry Clark, Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust. No need for no Holocaust. Maybe some nameless forces, psychological development of African children. It's time for some building. Blueprint for black power, dropping facts how the system creates Uncle Tom's traitors and black cowards. Marcus Garvey, his opinions and philosophies. He's one of the greatest, my brother, he got to be. No TV, my brother, we got to read. Soldiers gotta be sober, so my brothers put out the weed. Yeah, the dark sanctuary, they hung us from trees. It's documented, when I read it, I started to weep. I'm up all night studying, falling asleep. Gotta finish the ISIS papers, the chapter is when I'm home, somewhere all alone. I'm reading, preparing for war with these demons. Exercising, practicing my breathing. Live for a purpose, do nothing for no reason. When I'm home, somewhere all alone, I'm reading, preparing for war with these demons. Exercising, practicing my breathing. Live for a purpose, do nothing for no reason. I'm not reading no trashy novels, I'm not watching no Medea. I'm reading live from death row, Bible free, reading some George Jackson, blood in my eye. I'm a soldier, just in case you were wondering why the autobiography of Malcolm X gave me self-respect. So if a crack of disrespect, I'm pulling out the check. Layla Africa, African, holistic health, McClure Anderson, black labor and white wealth, powernomics. Most of y'all is hooked on chronics. You better pick up a book, get hooked on phonics. Read more on the horizon by an irritated genie. Yeah, I'm building with the brother every time I go to DC. Black Holocaust 2000, by Dale Jones. And the information in that book, the swell dome. Reading some UBP, the doc for the people, revolutionary suicide. The music is free. When I'm home, somewhere all alone, I'm reading, preparing for war with these demons. Exercising, practicing my breathing. Live for a purpose, do nothing for no reason. When I'm home, somewhere all alone, I'm reading, preparing for war with these demons. Exercising, practicing my breathing. Live for a purpose, do nothing for no reason.
Peace. This is Nayaba Ande. I am representing a thought, a movement, a philosophy that we will be ultimately victorious, that we will not be defeated. I'm inspired by that. I know it's the reality. We should read Coco Bandits, Annihilate Corrupting Innocence by Del Jones, the War Correspondent. Peace.
Yeah, this is Bless from Messiah Clothing, from the heart of Brooklyn, 799 Rogers Avenue. And I recommend you read The Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey by Amy Jacks Garvey. Stay up, bless.
Coach Mayas representing United Front, Diesel Movement. The book I'm reading when I want to get my mind right is Race First by Tony Martin. Simply because Garvey is the foundation and the root.
Yeah, peace. It's a little brother divine around. Live to the front lines. New Black Panther Party. National Youth Minister. Right now I'm reading Spiritual Warriors Are Healers by Baba Ishi, the Master Teacher. African Martial Arts. Cooking Ghana in Google. Every black man, woman, and child should have this book. Read this book, study this book, and research this book to get more of a thorough social, scientific, philosophical, and spiritual growth and development phase going on in their life. And we can't forget the mighty Dr. Francis Cresswell, the ISIS papers, Black Power.
This is the irritated genius Southeast, father of the kinetic demon. The war on the horizon, black resistance to the white sex assault. Brothers and sisters all across this planet need to read this book right now because we're in the midst of warfare. Europeans are trying to destroy our people. As African people, we have to unite, understand the forces that we're facing, and unite so that we can destroy our enemies and liberate our people.
Hotep family, welcome to the BB for Hodie with the Mwalimu and Baruti program on War back again. We are always here the first Friday of every month from 7:30 to 9 and possibly beyond, depending upon what time Enia and I have. It's going to be me and the family tonight. Enia is very much involved in the 5th annual Youth Health Science Fair here in Atlanta, which involves pretty much all of the independent black, African, well, I'll just say black educational institutions. And it goes on for 2 days, and the children get a chance to do some research. The focus tends to be a lot on health, at least it has been since the beginning, in terms of what is good for us and what's bad for us. And they're learning as they're doing the research for these presentations about what's good to eat and what's not good to eat, and what's good to breathe and what's not good to breathe, and what they should be reading and shouldn't be reading, and how to go about the business of being able to feed ourselves. So she's very much involved with that, and even though that's over for the day, she's pretty tired, and I clearly understand. My only role today was really just to be on point, make sure that none of the children got lost in the mall, and all the rest of the stuff. So it's me and you tonight, and we're going to be talking about warriorhood. Before we do, though, I want to give out the number, and I'm going to give it out twice, and hopefully I'll remember to give it out again, because I do want folks to call, and I do want to talk to folks for a while. I do have a little extra time, so if folks have questions or comments or what have you, maybe we can have a little discussion or back and forth, or just Q&A for a while after I finish saying a few things. So people, pull out your pencils and your paper, and please write down the number. You need the whole thing in order to call in. The number here is 760-569-7676. And you have to then punch in the participation code of 948656, and then the pound sign. Again, the number is 760-569-7676 with the participation code of 948656, and followed by the pound sign. And I want to make this announcement. In fact, I think I want to make a few announcements, because probably by the time I get to the end of the program tonight, I won't have time to do that. Want everyone to know about, and I think this is very important, and a very important initiative, and I'm hoping that this will continue, maybe quarterly, or maybe every half year, or maybe yearly, or maybe every month. There's a new, not agenda, but a new program, if you will, here at War on the Horizon, which we're calling Sound Off with the Irritated Genie. And that's going to have its introduction, it's going to have its debut this coming Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is really a time where the listeners, the members, the War on the Horizon family, hopefully there won't be people who are not part of the War on the Horizon family who would fall into the category of idiots trying to call in and mess everything up, because this is supposed to be a time of reflection, of constructive criticism, of suggestions for improvement, even if you will, thoughts of appreciation, because we need to also not only be critical of each other, which is very important for our growth and development, because no one is perfect, no one is a perfect mirror of themselves. So they need other people who are honorable, who they can respect, who they have their best interests at heart to tell them when they're deviating from a particular path, or when there's something that they're missing in their conversation, or something that they're not saying. So this Monday at 7 p.m. on War on the Horizon with Sound Off with the Irritated Genie is the opportunity for folks who love African people and want African people to attain sovereignty and understand War on the Horizon's role in the movement towards sovereignty, and our movement right now towards sovereignty, can call in during that time. I don't know the span of the program. I just know that it starts at 7, and of course, if it's what I would like, or what I hope that it would be, then it may go on for hours. As long as I said that the comments that are brought, the people who are calling in, the warriors who are calling in, are Horizon can be improved, both on and off the air. What maybe even what topics that folk want the Irritated Genie or other folks who are members of the War on the Horizon broadcasting family to address, maybe specifically asking that particular individuals talk about this topic or that topic because of what is their perceived expertise. And again, of course, also thoughts of appreciation. I'm of course not going to be part of this Irritated Genies thing, but we need to show some appreciation for what has been done and what is being done, because this War on the Horizon program came from somewhere. It came from a mind that had a vision, that wanted this to go a particular way, that wanted warriors to understand things in a particular way, that wanted warriors to see, and yes, I say in a particular way, that's very important, wanted warriors to understand the concept of enemy in a particular way, and wanted warriors to have a clear line, no room for a gray area, no room for a safe space in terms of being a warrior. But again, and this is the last time I guess I'm going to say this. I've been talking about it for a while because I'm pretty excited about the idea of this. That's going to be Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sound off with Irritated Genies. Hope to see everybody here. And again, the phone number to call in tonight, as well as them. Then I'm assuming that the phone number doesn't change from program to program. I'm pretty sure that it doesn't. The number for tonight is 760-569-7676 with participation code of 948656, followed by the pound sign. And I wanted to make I really want to make two quick announcements before I get going here. Three, really. First, for folks who didn't know, the Safo, the book, is back from the printers. For folks who want copies, folks who have been asking about it, you can order it on our site, www.akabenhouse.com. The other two things, the first is we're pretty much finished the online course that's going on now, but we have a course scheduled to begin the 5th of March online, which will also run for 4 weeks every Wednesday night for those 4 weeks starting March the 5th, 7:30 to 9:30 at night. And this course is based on the book of Safo, and the course is entitled Safo, so that begins March the 5th of this year. If you want information about that, just shoot me an email, or shoot War on the Horizon an email, and we'll give you all of the details that you need. And also, the one that I'm really looking forward to, and it's a 6-week course. I haven't done a 6-week course in a while because 6-week courses can be somewhat draining, especially when you have a full-time homeschooling program that you also have to deal with. But I'm going to do another 6-week course this summer because it is called for. This course is going to be entitled Sexual Insanity, and we're going to spend the first 2 weeks dealing with the sex imperative. We're going to spend the next 2 weeks dealing with homosexuality and the feminization of African males. And I've done a course before on the sex imperative, but I've never done a course on homosexuality and the feminization of African males. And the 5th class will deal with Yoruba's eunuchs, and the last class will deal with solutions. So I'm really going to be dealing with the material in 3 books, Sex Imperative, Homosexuality and the Feminization of African Males, and Yoruba's eunuchs. And that will be from June 5th through July 10th. That's going to be a 6-week course. So again, shoot me an email, send me a message on Facebook, whatever. Just let me know that you're interested, and I will be glad to give you the information. And I'm sure War on the Horizon would have no problem giving you that information either. Okay, so tonight I want to talk about warriors, part of this message to the warriors discussion, which is to me so very critical and so very important. The book was written just like Evil was written because we need some ground rules, we need some basics, we need just a general idea about what warriors need to be about, from which warriors can go and create themselves in their own reality. They can create whatever it is that they need with a good grounding, with a good understanding. And I think that I am, or have been, allowed to be in a position where my thoughts on role on the front line can be trusted to say the majority of the things, or at least a significant number of the things that warriors need to think, warriors need to be about on the front line. So I'd like to start out with something which I'm not planning on reading anymore tonight, but I want to read from the next to last chapter in the book, a set of rules. And from this set of rules, I'm not going to talk about anywhere near all of these things in this set of rules, but I think that these are important, just like the daily affirmations that people have, or a mission statement that warriors should have on their wall somewhere in their residence. This is a set of rules which I think are extremely important, which help to define an African warrior scholar who's on the front line, recognizes that we are at war. And of course, I should have started this whole statement with the fact that the statement that we are at war. I need to start each one with that, as Kamal Cambone suggested a number of years ago, and I could find absolutely no reason to disagree with him, because that's an actual fact, and it needs to be stated repeatedly so that we don't lose sight of that, just like we need to say repeatedly a Bibi Fahodie, so we do not forget about it. We are at war is a statement of fact. It's been a statement of fact for us for thousands of years, and we need to be aware of this, and we need to act on that fact. Those who are warriors know that they are warriors. They know that they have something to do that is important. To be a warrior requires a very special kind of person. That's why there aren't that many of us. It requires someone who really has a major issue with injustice. Really has a problem with it, and recognizes that the injustices of this reality are almost completely against African people. And since we are African people, and since we are one, and since we are our ancestors, then it is our role and responsibility to fearlessly, uncompromisingly confront, stop, and remove this problem, this threat, this aggression from our community, at least from that part of a community, at least right now, at least from that part of the community that understands that there is a threat and need to create a safe space, a safe area, a sacred space for itself, wherever that community be, on the continent of Australia, wherever that community may be. Warriors are there. I seriously, beyond serious, I know that there is no place where there are Africans where there aren't warriors. I know that for a spiritual fact. I know that my ancestors did not just say, okay, well, we're just going to have some warriors in that place that they call the United States. We're everywhere. The problem is that we are so few, and for some of us, that is perceived as a problem in a negative sense. I'm saying problem in terms of the ability for us to confront this enemy, this problem, quickly. Of course, then again, if you think about it, maybe it's not something that needs to be confronted quickly in terms of this being over fast. When you have a problem of this magnitude, and assault of this magnitude, and aggression of this magnitude against the people, it's not going to be quick. So you have to have people who are in there for the long haul. You have to have people in there who understand that they may not see victory during their lifetime. They may not see that victory during their children's lifetime. You have to have people who have that seventh generation mentality, seventh generation vision, where what they do is based upon the benefit 7 generations down the road, not the immediate benefits, because the problem is so huge. All you have to do is to go into any mall in any predominantly black area, or anywhere that blacks predominantly go, and just find you a bench someplace, like I'll do when I go to the mall and do editing, and just occasionally look up and look around and see the level of mental insanity you see among African people of every single solitary age, to know that this is going to take some time. Because first the threat has to be dealt with at a local level, so that the collection of children, the families of the warriors themselves, can be secure enough for the warriors to go out and do the kind of damage that needs to be done, or to work the magic within those spaces that needs to be done. So in terms of that being something that is going to call for our defeat. It is something that will make it difficult, but that also is part of being a superb warrior, encountering struggle repeatedly and learning from that and building from that and honing yourself against that struggle so that you become stronger, prepared for the next bigger struggle. So the numbers, it can't be that large. There's too much fear. There's too much ignorance, and it's going to take the movement, the development of people in small numbers, in small groups, progressively moving forward in order to correct that. And I know some people may disagree with me on that. It needs to be done now. We need to all the rest of this, or it won't be done. But I can't see it being done quickly because of the magnitude of the problem and the depth to which we have internalized our side of the problem as if it is normal and natural for us. It's different when everybody recognizes that there's an enemy and you have some warriors and they go to do the work and the people protect and supply and all the rest of that, the warriors, and that's very different from when the vast majority of the people believe that they are that they are the enemy, that they are themselves the enemy, that the enemy loves them more than life itself, and that their whole mission, they were sent here to convince this enemy that they are human and that they should be treated more humanely, and that their power is God-given and they're supposed to rule over the earth, and we're supposed to assist them to rule over the earth, and our only goals in life are supposed to be to find ways to get more of the crumbs of their extortion from other African people, or even including ourselves. So we need to begin every discussion with, I guess, two things. One of the things we need to begin every discussion with a libation, particularly every public discussion, even every private discussion, with an individual or more than one individual, and with the statement that we are at war. But the following listing that I'm going to give you is in the chapter, the Warrior's Rules in Message to the Warriors. And it's about a page, a little less than a page. But I'm asking people to listen very carefully. If you don't have a copy of the book, please get a copy of the book. Please read it, because this is like bits and pieces of a summary of the ideas that I talk about in here. But if you don't have a copy of the book, if you can't afford a copy of the book, then find someone who does have the book and ask them. I don't think I have a problem with them making a copy of page 159 and 160 out of this book for you to have. But please make sure that you get an understanding of what this discussion is about, because people have been asking, okay, well, how are we defining warrior? What does that mean? And this is my answer to that. So the rules, well, really, this is a description of warriors. The rules is really not, well, yeah, it is appropriate, but I'd rather just say a description. And so this is sort of like the statement that the warrior would make in terms of to self. Okay. I have an unqualified love and respect for our children, complement fellow warriors and elders. I believe in our race first. I do not sleep with my enemies. I have no white or other non-African bed partners and do not procreate with them. I am strictly heterosexual. I neither condone, support, nor promote sexual insanity. I am not an interracialist. I do not have white friends. I do not associate with enemies unless my survival depends on it. I look to the wisdom of my ancestors and elders for direction. I am prepared for any exigency. I dress for war, not display. A traditional sense of decency always guides my appearance. I daily listen to consciousness-raising revolutionary music. am a thinker, not an intellectual. I apply what I know. I am deeply spiritual, not religious. I do not align myself with enemy-based communist, socialist, internationalist organizations. I am not and do not associate with feminists. I uncompromisingly work toward the complete and total liberation, empowerment, and sovereignty of African people. I am not contradictory in what I think, say, and do. I am resilient. I will never give up. In one of these, about halfway through, I will use the word exigency, and I need to define it because I was asked that question in class here. Sometimes I use words that I've been using for a long time that I really like, or both, and I will forget that everybody doesn't have a knowledge of certain words that I may have knowledge of. Of course, they may have knowledge of words that I don't have knowledge of. But exigency is the word that was in one of these instructions, if you will, or descriptions, and it says, I am prepared for any exigency. That means I'm prepared for anything that will happen. Any possible scenario that comes along, I'm supposed to be in some way, shape, form, or fashion prepared for it, either having experienced before, thought about it, or have acquired as many skills that I possibly can so that whatever may happen, I will in some way, shape, form, or fashion be prepared for it. Now, warriors are well, before I talk about warriors, because that can really be a good conversation. Warriors have enemies because war means that you have enemies. War means that you're fighting against somebody, not just a little pit-pat type thing. You're trying to remove them from existence if they're interfering with you being yourself, or if you are aggressive type people, you're trying to remove them so you can steal their stuff. But when we talk about warriors in this book and in my mind, warrior to me is synonymous with African nationalist. That means that you're talking about an African who believes that all African people are one people and that we form a nation, and that our goal is to bring that nation back together, and we're supposed to bring that nation back together under a sovereign roof. That's supposed to be the goal, and that's what we think about when we think about a warrior. So when I'm talking about warrior, you can throw in words in that definition like nationalist, like sovereignty. All of those things to me are the same thing. It's just a matter of how many words you want to use. But for me to say warrior means sovereignty seeking. For me to say warrior means that I am a nationalist, a Pan-African nationalist. That's automatic. So when we're talking about a warrior's enemies, and we want to use general definitions that allow us to deal with whoever may be the problem, whoever may be at fault, that we can say that our enemies are any person, living, deceased, or yet to be born, who in any way, shape, form, or fashion works against African people gaining sovereignty. That's an enemy. Now, there may be different degrees of that concept of enemy, and those different degrees are only for the purpose of us determining how to deal with those individuals from the worst possible scenario to the easiest possible scenario, from killing somebody to ignoring somebody. But that concept of enemy is in its general sense is very, very important for us to understand that it is anyone. At this point in time, we don't have time to sit down on either side of the line of community, if you will, and have conversation with people who are acting against African people. We don't have time for it. And I said the degree to which we deal with it will depend upon the intent and the degree to which it works, or the level to which it works against African sovereignty. If it's the intensity of the threat. Because some people make a lot of noise, but their bark is a whole lot worse than their bite, or they may be toothless. They may just be have gums that they're barking with, and those individuals you can ignore. And then there are some individuals who will shoot at you, and they have to be, of course, dealt with in a different way than those individuals who will call you all kinds of names from 2 blocks away. So, but that doesn't mean that both of them are not enemy. So we have to understand that we're talking about anyone who is working against African sovereignty, anybody working against African people becoming empowered, liberated, sovereign, African sovereignty. And in saying that, we know that its age is irrelevant, sex is irrelevant. You know, Nat Turner was clear on that. Khalid was clear on that. You know, it doesn't make a difference. The enemy is an enemy. There's no civilians during wartime. And Europeans will only use the word civilian conveniently, especially when they're talking about people who they want on their side, or when they're talking about their own kind of people, if you will. But there are no civilians in war. So we're not making any distinctions based upon age or based upon sex. And I say sex, I don't say, well, I'm not going to get into discussion that. Maybe I'll deal with that. There's some of the difference between sex and gender, and why Europeans are now wanting people to say gender instead of sex. We also have to understand, as enemies, in terms of dealing with enemies, that we know Urugu. We know Urugu well. We know the persistence. We know the aggression. We know the single-minded focus of complete and total domination of the universe in their mind. So there is not even the slightest possibility, as some people would imagine, put them on the island of Australia and put barbed wire all around and just fill the waters so that they're all shark infested, and fly helicopters over with radar to check on them on an hourly basis to make sure that they're not developing any kind of technology, blah, blah, blah. You can't contain people who are determined to be evil. It's impossible to contain. And you may be able to isolate them for, I don't know, a few thousand years, I guess, but they're going to find a way. Just like I said, life is going to find a way. Death is going to find a way too. So when we're talking about enemies, we have to think about that in terms of the mind of the enemy, and whether, I mean, it's like when I guess for some of us, when you were in school, there were some people who you got in a fight with, and if you just beat the living daylights out of them, then that would be the end of the discussion forever. That would have been enough. They just had a lot of mouth, and you just need to shut them up one second and embarrass them, in front of their mama, what have you, and then that girlfriend or whatever, and that would be the end of the discussion. You wouldn't have to worry about that person ever again. In fact, that person might even eventually become friends. So that individual you didn't really have to worry about, but those individuals who it didn't make a difference, that they just love to fight. They just love to hurt people. Beating them down one time was not going to be enough. That would never be enough. Essentially, if you wanted to stop them from attacking you, then they have to be removed from existence. Then the existence that you're talking about is maybe out of the neighborhood, but we're not talking about people who you can move out of the neighborhood, because we're all stuck on the same planet, and we can't. There isn't a place where they can be isolated, where they can't come back from. That we have to understand. This is the logic that I give in the book, which to me is so simple logic. We get people who want to have these long conversations about how we can change them, or how we can make this world so that it will be easier for us, and we can maybe, like I said before, isolate them on Australia, or get them somewhere in concentration camps somehow, and just brainwash them for 20, 30 generations, and everything will be straight. You gotta understand what is going on now. And I talked about this last time. I think there is a simple logic to this for me. Number one, Europeans, being what they are, they cannot tolerate difference. It's not possible for them to accept unless they dominated, and then it wouldn't be it anymore. for them to accept African people or anyone being themselves in European space. They can't allow that. They can't accept that. And the second part of that logic is that Africans, in order to be African, they must be in their own space. Okay, that's number two. And number three, the logical conclusion, if you will, and that's a conclusion that individual warriors have to come to on their own. Therefore, Africans can't be African within European space. We don't have the luxury of that. We don't have the luxury of that dream on that mountaintop somewhere. We don't have that. We don't have that luxury because we're dealing with people. We're dealing with beings. We're dealing with whatever that is not capable of understanding anything but domination. So we have to bear that in mind when we're talking about enemies, and that has to be crystal clear to people. There is no negotiation here. There's no conversation. There's no reform, and technically there's no revolution unless you're talking about a revolution that removes the evil element. That's the only kind of revolution that you can really talk about, and of course that's when you get in. That's when you start separating the warriors from the pseudo warriors or the wannabe warriors or the talkers or the game slayer. That's when you start separating, because when you get to that point, people start talking about what you can't do. People start talking about what is not possible, and then they start deviating from, especially the meditators and all the rest of that in terms of the non-actors. That's when you get into a contradiction, because first you say that there's nothing that's beyond the human mind and nothing beyond the African mind, and then because you're dealing with this enemy that has you not fighting in the first place, you start to talk about what we can and cannot do, and one of the things that we can and cannot do, and that's when you start finding this heavy emphasis on the African understanding that you cannot remove a enemy in terms of their practical warfare. But this practical warfare was not a practical warfare that was developed in the presence of the European, and was not developed in the presence of European warfare against African people, which of course we know that we have to understand that that's where we're at. This is who we're dealing with now. This is what we're dealing with now. Okay. So the kind of warrior that we need to deal with this, really it's almost like describing a superhuman person, because we're talking about someone, either that or we're talking about someone who belongs in a mental institute in terms of them being insane, because in this reality, no sane person would want to take on Urugu. That wouldn't make sense. That's like signing your death certificate for in most of our minds. So you're talking about someone who is sort of like that crazy fearless, not crazy like crazy stupid, but crazy fearless, where you can't afford to even consider the possibility of fear. It's not even a part of category, and it has to be to the point where it's not even a part of your thinking. It's not something that would ever come up as a thought or as a question, because you've moved well beyond that. Fear is irrelevant. Fear's got nothing to do with it. Of course, pain may be an issue there. Nobody wants to be in pain, but that's different than fear. Okay, and like I say, pain comes along with that, but that's very different. Nobody, I don't think anybody except a serious masochist really enjoys, and of course the masochist enjoys it because their mind is so twisted that they are misinterpreting the signals that their brain is receiving. But that fear factor cannot be a part of the warriors, and that's extremely difficult for an African who is the descendant of Africans who have been under assault for thousands of years. Fear is the easiest thing to have. Fear is the easiest thing to be. So the warriors are very much an anomaly on this planet among African people. So to be a warrior among African people, to be an African who is also a warrior and recognizes the fact that they are at war and they must act in this particular way, whether they liked it or not. And of course, they should like it. put you on a different level. And when I say level, I'm talking about how you think, because it's not like this hierarchical elevated level, because technically warriors are supposed to be, in terms of levels, beneath their people, because their job is to serve their people. Their job is to be the servants of their people. Their job is to do everything to help their people and to not take anything from their people, and to not expect anything in terms of service or what have you from their people. That's something that we see repeatedly in the books. A warrior doesn't take anything from his or her people, doesn't expect his or her people to defend him. That's his job. That's her job to do that. And that takes a special kind of character. Under normal circumstances, where you're maybe in combat with people who have equal amounts of power, relatively equal amounts of power, relatively equal levels of technological development, military-wise, or what have you. But when you're talking about individuals who are overwhelmed, numerically overwhelmed, at least in terms of the places where they are most volatile or willing to aggress against the enemy. In these places, they are militarily and they are numerically overwhelmed. Not just outnumbered, but overwhelmed. It's more than just outnumbered, outgunned. It's overwhelmed. It takes a special brand of courage. It takes a special kind of mind. It takes a special ear that listens to their ancestors a particular way in order for you to be, for that person to be a serious warrior. Anything else is play, because this is no game. These are our children. This is our future. Either we're going to become liberated, empowered, sovereign people, or we're going to be assimilated, absorbed, disappear into whiteness. Those are the only two options. Those are the only two options. There's no other option as far as I'm concerned. There's no other way for African people to be African people, and that is to remove our threat so that we can be liberated, empowered, and sovereign. And in the process of removing that threat, recognizing the nature of that threat. So whatever is done has to make sure that threat never returns, because we're not doing this just to get some breathing room for 50, 60, 70, 100 years. We're doing this because we want to permanently, if that's possible within in this universal cycles, if that's possible within this universal cycles, we want to permanently remove that threat. And if we can't remove that threat permanently, at least for 60, 70, 80,000 years, I think I could settle for that. Maybe, not really, but still, it would have to be a long time in terms of the removal of the threat, because I don't want my great to the 20,000th power to have to be concerned about having to deal with this evil again. So when we're talking about warriors, of course, we're talking about those that are fearless. We're also talking about those, and it takes a special kind of, I keep saying special kind because this special kind in all kinds of variables. It takes a special kind of connection to spirit. I'm not talking about someone who has gone through the rituals and the rites and become a comfort or what have you, all of it, even though that, of course, can be a very good thing depending upon the person's mind, depending on the person's consciousness, okay, because becoming a quote-unquote spiritualist, if your politics are not about African liberation, then becoming an African spiritualist isn't going to change that. But a warrior has to be very spiritually charged, has to be very connected with spirit, even if it isn't a loud thing, even if it isn't a long, extended thing, even if the warrior isn't necessarily really that cognizant of it his or herself. They have to be really spiritually connected in order for you to do this work. We just might not recognize the spiritual connection. But what I've heard from most warriors who have compliments, especially most men who are warriors who have compliments, the sister that they are the complement of, they say that these men are very spiritual. course, and I'll say Eni, I said that to me at one time too. And of course, I frowned up my forehead and looked at it and said, "What? What are you talking about?" She said, "No, I'm not talking about religious philosophy." I said, "Well, I know you're not talking about that, but you are very spiritually connected. You are spiritually guided. Spirit works within you easily." And I've heard that from a lot of brothers, and I've heard that from a lot of sisters relative to being warriors or being in the presence or being the complement of a warrior. I said it's maybe something that we recognize, may not be something that we recognize, but it's there, and we think and act in a spiritual way. And maybe that has something to do with thinking righteously. Maybe it has something to do with operating under the oracle of Ma'at, which has to do with righteousness, seeking out balance, seeking out reciprocity, trying to correct the universe, which automatically should connect you even to a greater extent with the universe, which is spirit, than, I guess you say, other people. I don't know. I just know that in order for you to do this work, you just can't do it off of your sweat and your blood and your bones and your nutritional intake. There has to be and your anger or your righteous rage, because that's not going to carry you but so far. There has to be something else that carries you for years and years and years and years and years, for 24 hours a day over all of those years. Okay? So the simple human stuff isn't enough to do that. So it's got to be a greater variable there, one that cannot be accounted for with Western science. Warriors also are knowledgeable, and this knowledge doesn't require 20, 30 books, and depending upon the mentality of the person, it may only take 1 or 2 videos and a life's experience, or it may take 1 or 2 or 3 books only, because those books opened up what was already there, what they were already seeing, but just had not been able to articulate in a historical way, or our historical way. So the warrior, in terms of their knowledge base, they need to know their enemy as well as their self, because if they don't know their self and they don't know their enemy, they're not going to know what to destroy and what to build. Because what was that quote in what was his name? He said, "There's nothing more dangerous and destructive in a home than an angry, frustrated black man." So you can have the Nathan McCall, Makes Me Want to Holler, is in that book. You can have all the righteous rage in the world, but if you don't understand the source, and you don't understand who you are, so you don't know how to rebuild what you are as a people, then it's a waste. I firmly believe that was why, and I don't have to believe it. It's told by Arthur Schomburg that you need to go study your European, go study your enemy, so you'll know why your people got to be where they're at in the first place. So a warrior has to be aware. Warriors have to have a knowledge base. They have to have a knowledge base that's grounded in history and that's grounded in our story. Warriors also, and I talked about this a while, a number of with the Mwalimu Baruti programs ago. Character, the kind of character that a person is extremely important. Warriors have to be a good character. They have to be the best of character. And that best of character has to be shown relative to themselves, because we can be awfully hard on ourselves. I've spent I don't know how many days, hours, evenings over the years trying to convince, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, warriors to stop beating up on themselves because of stuff that they did before they came into consciousness. So warriors are very hard on themselves, which is another reason why one of those qualities of warriors, warriors are extremely respectful of other warriors who are doing the work, because know what that takes. We know how much dedication is required for that. We know how much energy is required for that. We know how much suffering is required for that. We know how much loss in terms of family and friend, quote unquote friends, that is required for somebody to do this kind of work. The economic loss in many cases, even though there is not and should not be a correlation between warriorhood and poverty. I don't aspire to poverty, and neither should any other warrior. But we have this enormous amount of respect and humility toward warriors who we respect, who are doing the work, because we know what it takes. The problem is we see them and we hold them in honor and are really admire them and what they're doing, and we forget that we're doing the same thing. And it's taking the same thing for us to do what they're doing. So warriors have to bear that in mind. I'd say the main quality of character that warriors have to have, and it doesn't necessarily require some honing in some people, some fine tuning in some people who are on their way to be warriors, but some it does, because we bring a lot of baggage from our pre-consciousness days. And I'm saying this in a general sense because most people who have come into consciousness came into consciousness. They weren't born into an African-centered family, African-centered household. I mean, a serious African-centered household. That's pretty rare. So most of us woke up to being warriors in, our mid to late teens, some earlier than that, 20s, 30s, 40s. I mean, I know a guy, like 3 people, I believe, who woke up in their 70s. So everything that came, everything that they did, everything that they developed, everything that they trained their mind on up to that age of 70 is a battle in terms of being a warrior. It's something that you have to fight day in and day out. So if up to that time you stole a lot, well, it's going to be very difficult as you become a warrior to get control of that habit and remove it from your person. But whatever the case, the non-compromising part has to be the foremost of the priority of the warrior's character, because Baba Hannibal would say, if you compromise once, you're going to compromise again, you're going to compromise again, and you're going to compromise again, and you're going to compromise again. It's so once you get started on that track, so like you lie once, you lie again, you lie again, you lie. When you cheat once, you cheat again, you cheat again, you cheat again. Or at least it's easier to do. I guess like in the European mind, if you kill once, you kill again and again, and for them that's, I guess, a point of excitement. Not I guess, I know that's a point of excitement. So warriors cannot afford to be compromising in terms of their character, because that's a warrior's ruin. To compromise, that's something that the enemy can see so quickly, like a pimp can see somebody who is lost and lonely and is looking for a daddy figure or a mommy figure increasingly. Enemies can smell compromised individuals or compromisable individuals, a mile away, and then they play with them. So you have to be at a point where there's nothing that they have that you need. Okay, to me, that's the basis of being uncompromising. Because as long as someone can tempt you with something, as long as your appetite in any way, shape, form, or fashion, or any of your appetites in any way, shape, form, or fashion are controlled, guided, manufactured by them, then you're compromisable. So that's something that warriors need to be very, very aware of. And as I come down from my last few minutes on that, I said tonight I was going to talk about, because I wanted to have conversation. I'll again give out the number for folks who may have just joined us or joined us since I gave it out. The number to call here is 760-569-7676 with a participation code of 948-656 followed by the pound. Again, the number is 760-569-7676 with a participation code of 948-656. And of course, if you're on Facebook, I posted the announcement of this program today, and I believe yesterday, and a few days before that, and that number is on my page on Facebook, either Mwalimu Baruti or Bob and Mwalimu Baruti page. Warriors are very, very different in their treatment of their own than of their enemy. Warriors also understand that there are people that they can act as their own African, their natural African selves around, and there are people who they have to be on guard against because those people don't know what it means to be African, even though they may be African, and they'll see you as a sucker and try to figure out ways just to mess up your day or to trip you up or what have you, or to play you for a fool. So it definitely has to know differences in the people who they're dealing with, and just has to have this gentle spirit relative to African people who understand that they are African, and African people who do not present themselves as threats. Because there are a number of people who I know or encounter who are not African warriors, but they love African people, or they're respectful to African people, or they understand that they're a black person or what have you, and they're not trying to play you. And those people have to be treated gently. Warriors have a tendency to be really rough, and that serves a very important purpose. So, like folks will say, and I'll talk to some warriors, and was emailed one relatively recently. I think I included this in the email, where Ina Yah would she just talk about the differences in our personalities, and she called my personality like fire because I'm under Shango and all the rest of this stuff. And she said she came into this and I have a very fiery personality when it comes to dealing with threats or problems and stuff like that. But we have to be able to control or learn to control and modify that energy so that it doesn't negatively impact on those who are closest to us, those who are in our circles, be it complement children, other warriors, elders who, even though they are warriors, really have been, if you will, phased out of the warrior stage because they're not supposed to be doing that anymore. Younger people are supposed to be doing that, not the elders. So that gentleness has to be there also, and we have to, in African spaces, know when to be gentle and when to be on guard, when to perceive a threat, because if a threat shows up in the center, it immediately needs to be removed. It immediately needs to be evacuated. I also want to say, because I just talked about it for a second, elders are very respectful of elders and ancestors. Just read something from a brother by the name of Yao online earlier today, before we went to the science fair, in fact. Posted a statement about the respect that we're supposed to have for elders in the community, and that we've lost that, and that needs to be returned to us. That's very, very important, because that's part of being African. That's a major part of being African. If we're going to claim to be African, then we have to act like our ancestors. We have to be our ancestors. And our ancestors were very reverent toward the Creator and the universe and the Sasiyah. They were extremely respectful toward their elders. And if an elder did or said something that they disagreed with, well, then they approached that individual in a very respectful way. But it's like, I said, some of the things I've seen on Facebook, and another place, I'm picking on Facebook because Facebook is the most visible, where people, you'll have a warrior in his 20s, maybe in his 30s, who will be talking to an elder like he's talking to one of his peers, like he's talking to a fellow warrior. And I'm like, I don't care whether you disagree with that person or not. That's an elder. If they've proven themselves to be an elder, then you show that respect. They have earned that respect, even if they're wrong. They've earned that respect to be approached in a particular way. We have to get off of that. I mean, it's like taking on that European mentality of everybody is my equal. So I call, great grandma by her first name. that type of mentality where I'm 20, 30, 40 years old and I can talk to anybody any way I want to, that's not African. That's not the way that we respond to each other. That's not the way we treat each other. And to me, that's a very good sign of someone who is pretending to be African. That's a very good sign of someone who wants to be seen. That's a very good sign of someone who is arrogant and has not learned the rules of their ancestors. They're not being their ancestors. They're playing games. And essentially, you can even call them agent, however we want to define agent, because even if they're not being paid for, or their salary is not being paid by the enemy, they're working for the enemy because they are simply creating chaos, not only by starting fights, if you will, where they're not needed, but also assisting the enemy in breaking down or tearing down the levels of respect that were arranged in terms of protocol in traditional African society. And that's supposedly where we're going. Unless we're going to traditional European society, unless that's our goal, then we should be headed toward traditional African society, because that's who we are. And if it was good enough for our ancestors for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, then I would think that it would be good enough for us. I would think that it would. So I've been talking for about a half an hour now, even though I know a part of that at the beginning had to do with telling people what was going on and what's happening and giving them the number. I would like to, Sister Shabazz, you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if there are any calls or anything, any questions or any comments that have been typed in or what have you, I would be more than willing to entertain those now if they're there. If not, I'll keep on yammering.
Sounds good. I'm going to start by going down the line. However, if you do have any questions, just hit *6 and that'll put you in the Q&A line so that I know that you have a question. But until we give people time to do that, I'll just go down the line here. 0992, you're live on War on the Horizon. Oh, 0992. All right, we'll assume that they're just listening in, and from this point on, we'll just go to the Q&A. If you have a question, please hit *6. All right, you are live on War on the Horizon, brother.
Peace, Sister Shabazz, Bibi Faodie, Baba, this your Mwana Kweli, Brother True.
Peace.
Bibi Faodie, warrior, I recognized you as soon as you opened up your mouth. I knew who you were. How you doing?
I'm doing divine. I appreciate you asking. I'm actually sitting here with my 14-year-old Binti. Binti means daughter.
Yes, it does.
And,
I think that you were the one that told me that, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So we're just listening to you build together, and I just wanted to know if you had any specific words for her as a young warrior in training, my beautiful daughter.
Okay. Well, my first word of advice would be to read my essay, Groundings with My Daughters, in a book Menticide. It's not a difficult read at all, and it is a essay that Inia pushed me to do, to talk to our daughters about what it means to be an African young lady, Safo in training, who is growing up into womanhood and needs to know exactly who she is about and exactly who she's supposed to choose to be along beside her as she gets older in this battle as a complement, and what needs to be her vision. Right now, I would say, I guess maybe two or three things. First thing I say, which doesn't necessarily go down well with our warriors in training, is listen to your parents. Listen to the adults in your community who are part of the center, who are part of the center of the consciousness, because the advice, the talks, the fussing, all the rest of those things they do because they love you. And to me, that's always the first question that youngsters should ask when they're getting ready to get upset with mom, dad, or whoever else is whatever other mama or baba is in the vicinity, that they ask themselves before they get angry, does this person love me? Does this person love me? Would this person be willing to die for me? And children, of course, are very keen on love. They don't misguess on that very often. And know that if the answer to that question is yes, then you should listen to the criticism. That doesn't mean that you're going to change into something instantly and say, okay, well, they said this, and therefore I'm going to be exactly what they say. No, what that means is that is something, whatever it is that they said, is something that you should take into consideration because you think just like we think. So it's something that you need to hold on to and consider, because if somebody who loves you criticizes you, then it's because they see something that you may not see, or they think that you may not see, and they want you to be better. So when Eniya criticizes me, or I criticize Eniya, we know that we love each other. So even though the criticism may not feel good, or we may not like it, or we may not want to hear it, we still know that there's some validity, there's some truth to it, because I'm not going to say anything to her that is going to hurt her, that's going to work against her, because if anything else, if she's hurt, then I'm hurt, because I can't do my best work if she's not able to do her best work. So, to take the time to listen. The second thing I would say is I was getting ready to say, read all that you can, and of course that's still read all that you can that has to do with the consciousness that you are trying to develop, or you should be trying to develop. But there's a thought that keeps coming to me. There was a continental African who was a very well-written individual, and he wrote like at the academic level with all the big words, and most people didn't read him, but he was a very, very intelligent man, and he was aware that he was an African, even though he was in this alien environment. He still tried to play some of that, infuse some of that into what he wrote into his conversations. And one of the things that he said to me was really so simple, and it made all the sense in the world, and it helped me to better understand myself, because before really hearing that, I thought I had issues, just like before I realized that my slow reading wasn't a problem, because most of the people who were reading faster than me, they weren't retaining most of what they were reading, but I was reading slow and I was retaining almost everything. What he said made perfect sense, because I like to read, but I don't love to read. My brother loves to read, but I like to read. But I love to just think. I love dark rooms. I love spaces where there aren't people, and I'm not antisocial, but I love spaces where there aren't people, where I can sit down and think. I love to think. And when this guy said, read a little, think a lot. That's what he said, read a little, think a lot. And it clicked. So even though you do need to read as much as you can about our story and about our enemy's stories, you do need to read as much as you can about male-female relationships. You do need to read as much as you can about world geography and how it's changed over time. You do need to read serious books dealing with African black psychology, so you understand how we think. You need to read about menticides. You need to read about all of these things, but you need to read with a lot of thinking in between turning the pages. Okay, you need to don't feel that there's anything wrong with taking that book when you finish reading this paragraph 3 times, because it took you 3 times to get through it, because this was such a serious paragraph, and put that book down, put a marker in it, what have you, and then just sit there and chill and let whatever it was that you read just sort of mess around in your head. So your mind can figure out, sift it, put it where it belongs, and restructure it so that your understanding of it is better and more appropriate for your situation. In terms of reading, though, the one thing that I suggest that young folks read a lot when they get the opportunity, because this is easy reading. It's something if you got 5 minutes here, you got 5 minutes here. Read books of African proverbs. Read books of African proverbs. That's our wisdom. That's our not necessarily our story in terms of events that happen, all the rest of that, but the proverbs are our wisdom. So we really need to read and think about and even try to memorize. And my memory isn't the greatest in the world, but because proverbs are so wise and they fit situations so perfectly, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time trying to memorize them. They just sort of stick, in there. And also don't be so harsh on yourself. That I think is important. And I don't put this in the category of being a warrior, but I just put this in the category of being a human in terms of being an African. And I'll say it in terms of warriors too. Don't be so hard on yourself. Mistakes are going to happen if you, unless you're perfect. Any always talks to, particularly one of our students here who is a girl. She tells her all the time because she's always trying to be so perfect. You're going to make mistakes. If you were perfect, then you wouldn't be able to tolerate other people, and no one would be able to tolerate you, because you'd be expecting everybody else to be perfect like you are, and wouldn't want to be around you because you did everything right, and they did most of the things that they did wrong. So, be gentle on yourself. Be kind to yourself. Don't be so hard on yourself when you make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. The question isn't whether you're going to make mistakes. The question is, what do you do as a result of the mistake? How do you recover from it? What do you learn from it? How does that mistake help you? And when you look at mistakes in that fashion, then they really take on a whole new meaning. They take on almost like I'm waiting for the next mistake to occur so that I can learn something. You take on the approach that there's something good in it, even though those mistakes may be bad. There's something good in it, and when a mistake happens, you start looking for the lesson instead of looking for the pain or beating up on yourself because I was so dumb to do this, that type of thing. So that would be, I guess, the three things that I would say: listening to people who love you, reading but thinking more, and being tolerant of yourself. Expect to make a lot of boo-boos in life.
All right, Sid. You got any questions for him? Don't be shy.
Bibi
Fahodie, how you doing? It's been a little while. You been all right?
Yeah.
Good. It's good to hear your voice. It's very good to hear your voice. Are we going to see you on the 9th? Are you going to be coming on the 9th, maybe?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we'd love for you too. We'd love to see you.
I don't have him that weekend, Baba, but I'm gonna strive to get him. And Zinga will definitely be with us though.
Okay. Well, then you have to show this young lady the videos from the Message to the Warrior course. They should be ready in about a week or so.
Okay.
So she can connect a moving face to a voice. Because I've seen her. I know what she looks like. She might not know what I look like, but I know what she looks like. I've seen pictures. She's a beautiful young lady.
She seen pictures and.
You seen pictures?
Oh yeah, she seen pictures and she watched the Manhood DVD.
Oh, okay.
And you were our heroes and sheroes, and she met you at the Nat Turner in Harlem.
Wonderful.
Nat Turner Day in Harlem.
Wonderful. That's great.
Well, Bob, I know there's probably a lot of listeners, and just want to say Asante Sana. I appreciate you. I appreciate Ina and the work you're doing. And Bibi Fahodie, we'll be listening.
Key too. Bibi Fahodie, appreciate you, Warrior, enormously.
All right. That's all of the people in queue for now. Again, if you're listening and you want to call in, the number is 760-569-7676, participation code 948656#, and then just hit *6 to raise your hand and let us know that you have a question, and we'll come right back to you.
Okay, well, I'll talk a little bit. about my favorite subject in terms of warriorhood, and what I consider to be the least neglected aspect, as well as the most telling aspect, because in the years of doing this work, the most glaring contradiction for me is with warriors who don't defend their community, who don't do what's necessary to make sure that their community is physically defended. I have encountered so many people who are using the word warrior or using synonyms for warrior or implied warriors or implies that they are really serious about the work of nation building, and none of that involves in any way protecting, defending, warding off an assault. None of it in any way, shape, form, or fashion has anything to do with the survivability of the children, of the complement, the spouse. All it's got to do with, in a lot of cases, is being seen because they finally get to be seen. Somebody can finally hear them because they finally found an area where they can get an audience, even though if they had their way, the real audience wouldn't have anything to do with us. When we understand our story, when we understand what has happened to us, what is happening to us, and what is accelerated, the motherland right now being the prime example relative to invasion, and of course we know the scramble never ended. When we understand this assault on our bodies, on our minds, and our spirit, then we know that that should be the first thing that we do. That's our first and foremost priority, stopping the threat. And the threat is not a peaceful one. The threat is not a conversation. You're not going to talk your way through a revolution. The threat is violent, aggressive, terroristic. It's destructive. It's trying to exterminate African people from existence, whether that be physically, mentally, or spiritually. Try to remove us as a living force, as a living entity in the universe. So in recognizing that, then the institution that at least after family and spirituality should be dealt with, or should be attended to, that's a better way of saying it, attended to, should be the military. That doesn't make politics or economics or anything like that the less. But those can only be operated well within a stable environment. Politics works exceptionally well in a stable environment. Now, and I can hear an echo now, Sister Shabazz. That doesn't mean that it can only operate, because obviously guerrilla groups are a political force, and they're not operating in a stable environment. But then again, they are, because their organization is a stable environment, and the politics there reflect that stability, that order. But the military thing is the first and foremost priority, and in fact, the politics really are the force behind the military operation, the military organization, the paramilitary, whatever it is. So, coming from the discussion I had earlier today that centered around January Clark's understanding that the nation building, the running of a nation, the practice of it begins with the running of a home, the running of a family. When we talk about preparing for larger battles, then we have to practice in our daily lives. Men in particular, if we're fulfilling the role of being a man in the African village, and like I said, with the rules, we don't pay attention to feminist thinking and orientation. That doesn't mean that sisters cannot protect and defend themselves. And yes, sisters do need to be taken to the range. Yes, sisters do need to learn how to clean, dismantle, put back together, fire a handgun or a shotgun or a rifle or all of the above or automatic, whatever it is. But the primary role of defense is supposed to fall in the hands of the men, and that's primarily because women are the primary nurturers. Women are the ones who breastfeed. I don't know a man who can breastfeed. And women are the first teachers. So because they came with this special role and this special nurturing ability, then a safe space needs to be made and maintained for them to do this without problem, without issue. So preparedness is a major issue militarily for warriors. Preparedness, being prepared, being ready for any exigency, as I said before, anything that can possibly happen. So warriors, in terms of this, warriors can never be unaware. Being a warrior, being on guard, being prepared is a 24, 366 day a year phenomenon. It's not something that you do when you're at the paint, the paint range, the paint shooting range, what have you. It's not something that you only do when you at the real range. It's not something that you only do when you're out survival camping. It's something that you do continuously. You are always on alert. And I'm not talking about you being so hyper and what have you that your blood pressure goes up 40,000, points. We're talking about you just taking on the responsibility or being more observant of your environment, of being more careful in terms of your choices of the clothes and accessories that you buy, looking for those that are best suited to defend yourself, defend your family. Okay, so there are different types of, you wear belts, there are different types of belt buckles. Okay, and you need to be selective about that. There are different types of money clips. There are different types of shoes that we wear. There are different types of earrings that sisters can wear. Because some earrings can be used for weapons and some earrings can't. You can't use a feather as a weapon. Okay, unless you're going to tickle your enemy to death. You can't. A feather cannot be used as a weapon in combat. So the types of earrings that sisters get, there should be some functional utility in their beauty. Okay, there should be something there that they can use. Push comes to shove, because warriors know that there's no point of planned attack that you know of. There's no schedule that you can go and reflect on so that you can prepare for this minute or that hour or what have you. It becomes when you least expect it. So we need to be prepared when we least expect it. So warriors are supposed to be never unaware. They're always supposed to be cognizant. They're also always supposed to be thinking about the possibility of a threat. And I'm not talking about this is you just wake up thinking about, okay, somebody's coming through the window, somebody's coming through the door. What do I hear at the car? No, it's just an awareness like you have on a radar, where you're listening with your second, third, or fourth, or fifth, or whatever sense to what's going on around you to look for trouble. You are looking for the movement of shadows out of the corner of your eyes. You're looking for the best places to park your car so that you have the best escape route, or it's the best lit, or what have you. I never park my car without it facing out of the parking. I mean, out of the place that I'm parking. I never park my car with the front of it facing the wall or facing another car. It's always facing the way out, because I may need to move that car fast. I've never had to do that, and I've always done that. I've never had to speed away from a parking spot or speed out of a driveway. But I do know in my warrior's mind that if I had to, I would get out of it faster if the nose of the car was facing out and facing in. So that's just automatic. I don't think about it. I don't worry about it. It's not a concern. It's not something that I focus on. But to me, that's a point of preparedness. That's a point of considering every possible exigency, even those that I haven't imagined or maybe never could imagine. That's what I'm talking about, never unaware. We warriors also are very, very aware that a threat is a threat. It doesn't make a difference how small it is. It doesn't make a difference how large it is. We immediately go mentally in motion when anything that could possibly be a threat happens. When our children are playing, they know that if a dog comes down the street and there's no person with it on a leash, they are to immediately come into the house. There's no ifs, no ands, no buts, no conversation, no look at the dog, no let's pet, let's see, is it coming in this direction? No, they see the dog, they immediately come in. And of course, and then I'll make up the difference of the time that they lost being in here when the dog passed by or what have you. When they go back out, they understand that, but they know that may be the friendliest dog in the world. Okay, that may be the weakest dog in the world, but that's a threat. That's a potential threat. That's a potential death. Because if the dog is rabid or the dog is just ticked off at what have you, then one of those children could be dead. So they know that's just being prepared. Everything is seen. Everything that is a threat is a threat. Not just non-threat things, but anything that has the potential to be a threat is a threat. So a good example of that, a real simple example of that in terms of the woman's perspective. No, not the woman's perspective, just out of the eye of a woman who understands the concept of a threat being a threat. Our students were doing their presentation to whoever came by the tables, and there were, I don't know, maybe 30 different displays. So they were around this stage in the mall, and one of our students was at the end of the row of one table, and Enia's talking to me, and she said, hold on a second, I got to go over here and stand by this student because I'm not sure about this guy who's talking to him. And later she tells me, she said there was something effeminate about him, and she wanted to make sure that she stood by the student and made this guy aware that if that was the case, he wasn't coming to this student with it. But of course she told me before she stepped over there because she wanted me to be aware if anything went down that I was supposed to have an eye on her. So the idea that he was a potential threat was in her mind because she was aware of the threats in Western society from black males who are gender confused or may be gender confused or may promote the idea of gender confusion. So we have to always understand that any threat is a threat. As I said before, any exigency, any possibility, warriors are supposed to be prepared for. It doesn't mean, again, you're supposed to spend your days and nights coming up with and dreaming of all the possible scenarios of every possible way that somebody could come into your house. We shouldn't take that long anyway. But I mean, in all probability, if somebody's going to come up through your floor in the middle of your dining room, then they're going to have to make a lot of noise with a saw. So that's not really an exigency that you have to spend a lot of time thinking about. I'm talking about real live possibilities, and then you can work outward from there. The mind of a warrior, the mind of a servant of the people, always understands that we are our community's security. And I say the center of the community's security. Because as we move further out, some people would see us as a threat, even within the conscious community, in protecting them. Because they would say it's unnecessary, the threat is not there. So we have to understand that at least within the centered part of the conscious community, we are the security. We are responsible for our community security. It's in our hands, it's in our laps, it's our responsibility, it's our role to make sure that there's security there, which is another thing about the science project, the science fair today. There were 3 Babas there who I'm watching, and they're watching everywhere, everything. They're having conversations or anything, but you can tell from how their eyes are moving and what they're doing and the directions that they keep turning to, that they're watching certain entries and certain exit ways. They're keeping an eye. And you didn't see that a number of years ago within the conscious community in this way. But we're responsible for that. Anything happens, there aren't any excuses. Nobody's really going to understand if we weren't on point. You're supposed to be responsible. You're supposed to act accordingly. No one is supposed to have to tell you or pay you or ask you. You know, that's not what's supposed to be going on. If we're calling ourselves warriors, we recognize that we're at war, then obviously we should be recognizing that there is a threat. And our response to that threat should have become or should rapidly become second nature. It shouldn't be something that we have to think about. It shouldn't be something that we have to plan for. It should be something that we automatically do because we recognize that there are natural threats for Africans and an anti-African reality. Also, this idea of a threat, it requires practice. It requires proficiency. It requires us to do this over and over and over again to get it right. It requires us working with our sons, working with our daughters, I'm talking about men right now, working with our wives to make sure that they are on point and that they know what not to do and where not to be and where not to go without us knowing what they're doing or where they're going. And I don't think that that's patriarchal male chauvinism and anything. I think that's just common sense security. And I have yet to run any sisters in the center who don't understand that. And they want you, just like I say, African women want men. They don't want boys. They don't want males. They don't want something pretty walking around them. They want some men. They want somebody who can handle business. They want someone who, wherever they go, they feel safe. Or when they're in the company of this 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 men, they know they don't have to think about somebody coming at them wrong. They want this. So we have to be prepared for that. And as I said, I don't think that that's chauvinism or any of that other nonsense. Chauvinism means, well, we get into that some other time, but chauvinism means feminist nonsense. Finally, on that, the point that I make repeatedly, especially when I'm talking to groups of people and they're want to talk about African-centered education or homeschooling, security drills. We have, and I said it on this program, we have tornado drills, flood drills, hurricane drills, and I say tornado. We have all of these different kinds of drills, fire drills. We have all these different kinds of drills to make sure that the children are safe. We know where to go. We know where to meet up so we can do a body count. We know what speed to move at. We know, where to pull mattresses or pillows over our head, what room to stay at, blah, blah, blah. But when an alien or an enemy comes to any door or any window in the place that we're at, we don't have any drills for that. So they stay exposed and easily removed from existence. We have to develop within our personal nuclear, even though I really don't like that word, but we will work with it now. Nuclear families and our extended families, which form schools and community gatherings and things like that. We have to have security drills to the point where, in general, and it can't be, I'll say it can't be always, because in some of the community gatherings you have new people, or you have so many people, or you have a mixture of people from the center of the community and from the community in general, and it's not possible to do that. But in those spaces where we pretty much control, pretty much are familiar with the people who are there, and that's pretty much unchanging, we need to have drills. So if somebody comes to the door, if the meeting is in the front room or in the second room, then the person who answers the door, who should be someone who knows how to answer the door, who knows security, who knows to check on who's out before even thinking about reaching for the door handle or the key, they should be able to say a word or make a sound or touch a glass or whatever it is that they do to indicate that there's a threat, and immediately there is a response from the adults and the children there in terms of what they need to do, where they want to go, where they need to go, where they need to position themselves, et cetera, so that they can become invisible to that threat, or they can be prepared to deal with that threat. We need security drills. We need a lot of those security drills. Okay. I am going to officially stop there, because I want people to get this book and read it so that we can have a, if you will, a uniform guidelines within those definitions, like no Euros, no Negroes, no homos. Just these are supposed to be baseline definitions, unwritten warrior codes of dress. These things need to be understood, and I have talked about these in detail in this book. So again, the request goes out for people to find a copy of Message to the Warriors and read it and think about it a lot more than they read it, and to put some things in place which work to secure our community better and work to move us even closer to the you're going to say the idea, no, not the idea, the actual existence of real sovereignty, real African sovereignty, whatever that may mean in terms of us, whatever that may mean in terms of our enemies, whatever that may mean in terms of land, whatever that may mean in terms of our education, whatever that may mean. We need to move in that direction. So I'm going to ask Sister Shabazz for a final check to see if there are any more questions or comments.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. 0992, you're live on War on the Horizon.
Peace.
Peace.
Can you all hear me?
Peace. Yes, I can.
Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, peace. This is Sister Ajua.
Sister who?
Sister Ajua.
Is this my daughter, Ajua?
This is your daughter. Say
That's
hi
my daughter, Ajua.
And your granddaughter, Julia. Say hi.
Hi, Julia. Jumbo. Jumbo. Family, this is my daughter. Wow, I don't think I've ever talked to her on the radio before.
No, I don't think so either. I saw it on Facebook on War Horizon, and I was like, I am doing stuff, but I wasn't doing anything where I couldn't listen, so I wanted Julia and I to listen in.
Oh,
and since
so
we have
it's not that I'm chopped liver and you didn't have anything else to do. It's you are really calling in.
Yeah, I really listened to the whole thing, and I was reading the rules for the Warriors in the back, and I felt pretty proud of myself that I pretty much am following all of those rules on there, and hopefully how I live will make it easier for Jalea to do the same thing. And I just wanted to thank everybody who supports my father and buys his books or goes to the lectures or gets the tapes to take the classes or just comes to help out at the school. You know, they may not say it, but they really appreciate it, and all the help is necessary and is very appreciative.
Wow.
So I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, my daughter. And I'm serious. This is my biological daughter. That's my biological, Eniyan, my biological daughter and grandchild. I've never spoken on the radio. It's kind of weird.
I'm really nervous.
Well, Madasi T, young lady. I appreciate that. I will tell your even though I know that's not what you called. And having raised you, I know that you mean it, and I know that Jalea and the one that's on its way will be prepared. Will be prepared for whatever, because that was, in fact, I tell folks all the time, even though not in a negative way, we blame Ajua for the school and so many things, because she is really the reason why Akabin Institute was started. And I'll try to make this a very short story. She was getting ready to start high school, and the school that she was at, which was a private black school, they decided not to have a high school because there weren't enough students. So that left us with really no alternative. But it wasn't a problem, because it wasn't just like preparedness. It wasn't something that we had to think about. There was no conversation. I don't remember Enia and I having a conversation about starting Akabin Institute. It was a done deal because there was nowhere else that we could imagine her going, and we weren't going to allow her to get lost after all of the time and energy and work that we had put into her understanding that she was or is an African and supposed to act like her ancestors. So this is the one case, because most folks have never heard your voice, but Madasi P, and we'll be talking to you guys real soon.
Okay.
All right.
Madasi for all you do.
Yunasha, Bibi Fahodie.
Medowo, Bibi Fahodie.
Medowo.
All right, and that's all the calls that we have in queue for now.
Hello?
Yes, sir. That's all the calls that we have in queue for now.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Well, I've enjoyed the program. I'm still impatiently waiting for a certain book to come out in paperback or some kind of hard form so I can get my hands on it and read it, since I've heard some very good reviews on this book. So you have to let me know about that, right?
I certainly will. Actually, it's going to be going to the printer very soon. I'm just waiting on somebody to give me the forward, and it'll be all set.
Great, fantastic. We're waiting, and not just NEIs also. So let me at least do my last quick announcements. Again, I will remind everyone Monday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Sound Off with the Irritated Genie, where folks can call in and talk to the Irritated Genie, constructive criticism, suggestions for improving War on the Horizon, physically and in terms of the media, thoughts of appreciation. I keep saying it each time, because whenever we talk about having a town hall meeting or what have you, it's mostly about criticism. It's mostly about problems, and people forget to say thank you, to say Madasi for what has been done, because it's a lot to do what is being done here on War of the Horizon. Everybody, all of the people who are involved, it takes a lot of courage. And well, personally, I don't know anyone on here who isn't on the front of somewhere near or on the front of the front line, and the back of the front line requires extreme courage. So to have this and to have this program continue requires a lot of work and a lot of courage, and I think that needs to be appreciated. So at least some of the calls coming in ought to be about appreciation. So again, that's Monday evening at 7 p.m. here on War on the Horizon, Sound Off with the Irritated Genie. And the last three notices, again, the book of Sappho is back in print, so folks can order it from our site, www.akobenhouse.com. There will be a course based on the book, which will begin March the 5th online. It will be a 4-week course, one class every Tuesday evening from 7:30 to 9 online. And also in June, from June the 5th through July the 10th, June the 5th through July the 10th, I will be doing a course entitled Sexual Insanity, where I will be dealing with the books The Sex Imperative, Homosexuality and the Feminization of African Males, Yoruba's Eunuchs, and looking at some solutions. So, family, I've enjoyed being here. I appreciate your presence. Keep doing the nation-building work. Keep teaching our children and thinking in terms of sovereignty. Bibi Fahodie.
You gotta